Yeah. Hey, y'all. One Sunday morning, in the early days of my church life, I witnessed something both beautiful and heartbreaking. We'd had powerful worship that day. The word and the music had us all on fire. It was incredible. It was one of the most incredible things I'd ever experienced. Near the end of the service, during the closing song, a young man who I happened to know had AIDS and had been quite sick throughout that year suddenly got up from his seat and started dancing. He'd been a ballet dancer before he got sick, and according to congregants who knew him well, had not danced for years. But that day, something stirred in him in body and in spirit, and he danced. There was a middle aisle at this church, and he literally danced up and down this aisle. It was incredible to witness. Arms outstretched. I think he probably even did a pirouette at some point during this whole thing. It seemed like it was going on forever, but I'm sure it had only taken a couple of minutes. It was clear that the Spirit had moved in him and needed him to do something with it. And that's what he chose. It remains truly one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen happen spontaneously in service. Not too long after he got up, though, the pastor of that church managed to ever so quietly, and I as I remember, pretty gently, walked up to him, tapped him lightly on the shoulder, and whispered something in his ear. A rush of sadness came across his face, and just as quietly as she got up to speak with him, he sat down. I found out later that she had asked him to sit down because that was not the right time to dance. The worship leaders of the church had never incorporated dance into their liturgy, and so, it just wasn't done. It didn't matter that this was probably the first time he had danced since he had become sick. It didn't matter that the dance came directly out of being so moved in this particular service that was all he could do. It didn't matter that he'd lost his voice in far too many ways in the world as a person living with AIDS, and that his dance was his voice rising up again. It had never been done, and so it was disruptive. And so it could not be done. In this season that honestly lasts from June to October, right? When thousands of queer and trans and non-binary folks and our loved ones are celebrating Pride, as we gear up to consider and observe and celebrate our independence, in the throes of political upheaval, that's what I'm going to call it today. I could call it a lot of things, but I'm on the chancel. So what I'm going to call it is political upheaval that has had the direct result of some of us fearing for our very lives. And yes, even in the aftermath of our faith's General Assembly, that I'm sure many of us were a part of in some way, even if it was watching it on screen virtually, where far too many of us experienced harm in a process that is supposed to uphold the very best of our values and principles as Unitarian Universalists, it should come as no surprise that I show up honestly and truly worried about all of us. Worried about all of us. I come before you uncertain about what it means for us to have and give voice in our movement. And I find myself wondering why we continue to struggle to create spaces that heal more than they harm. In the midst of all that we face as human beings in the world, in this country, this state, thank you for that incredible information, Dr. Tony. As human beings in this very community, in all of the communities that we call home, I'm thinking about that dancer today, whose very body and spirit were considered disruptions to address rather than love to behold. As I stand here, I also come with some clarity. Clarity that the only way through these times, the only way through, is to reinvent how we engage with one another honestly and reimagine how we do life together accountably. Can we say accountably together? Accountably. Lord have mercy. We can only do it if we reinvent how we engage one another honestly and reimagine how we do life together accountably in our world and in the communities we call home, including right here in our Unitarian Universalism. I and others think of this revisioning as transformative ministry. And transformative ministry becomes possible when we invest in the unconventional. Make room for what we may not fully understand or even agree with. And remember what Grace Lee Boggs lifted up in her book. That, and I quote, "Our catastrophes are not acts of nature, but the consequences of our own ideas and actions," unquote. And so, we can bring those catastrophes to an end by transforming the way we have been thinking and living. I have to talk about my chorus brothers here. Sorry, I didn't tell you I was doing this. I'll apologize later. Since September of 2022, I have been a proud tenor two. Tenor twos? Are there any tenor twos? I know there are. Yep. I've been a proud tenor two of the Atlanta Gay Men's Chorus, some of whom are here, as you heard, singing for us today. Perhaps it was around this time last year, or maybe a little earlier, that our artistic director, our very own Donald Milton III, as well as David Aurelio, who's the executive director, and Gabrielle Claiborne, a board member from Voices of Note, the nonprofit that supports the existence of AGMC and the Atlanta Women's Chorus, invited trans and non-binary members of the chorus, of whom there are many. I don't have the exact number, but there are many of us, but invited us into a conversation about the possibility of doing a show that honestly and accountably honored the lived experiences of trans and non-binary people. They asked us how to do that show well. They listened to us share stories about our journeys and the music that influenced who we are and are becoming. Every single song from that show, Transformation, was chosen by trans and non-binary members of the chorus and of the wider Atlanta community. Some of us, some of you, I know, were able to attend that stunningly beautiful show. Yes, hey, that's right. And some of you just heard for the first time 2 of the songs that we did during that show. One here in Atlanta on April 6th, and 2 shows in Hendersonville, North Carolina, for Hendersonville Pride on June 15th. All of the work that leadership did to ensure our care and our safety in the process, honestly, would have been enough. It would have been enough for me. But something else far more powerful happened. Each of us, as chorus members, were made new. We were made new in the process of consideration and meaning making that was also new to all of us. We had never done a show like that before, had never considered music like that before, had never reached out to people in those ways. Don is amazing. Don can put a show together. Donald Milton III, y'all know, Donald can put a show together. But it had never been done like that before. And Donald, and I wasn't even thinking about this, but it feels really rich to say now, even Donald as a leader did this. You all actually know better than I do. Tell me how to do this. Help me. I'm sure at least a few of you know how hard that is for a leader to do. But that's what he did. And it made a difference. Coming into new or revised understanding about the need for a public voice of support for trans and non-binary members, particularly as we face all of the harm of anti-trans legislation all over the country, my chorus brothers offered love and care in a way that was unexpected. They asked meaningful questions and took to heart what they were learning. They were open to learning. The overwhelming majority of cis chorus brothers respected what we needed as trans and non-binary members to get through this cycle of deeply emotional and spiritual music making, because that's what it was. Music that touched on our joy, our pain, our growth, harm that had been done, and healing that was made possible both by our inside and outside voices. At a particular point in the cycle of rehearsals, when the basses sang, "I will be with you till the world blows up. Yeah." I believed them. Do you hear what I'm saying? I believed them. It became less about the words on the sheet music than it was about what it felt like to hear the sounds of those sentiments leaping up off the page by actual people who actually believed what they were singing. Hear me. Our Unitarian Universalism means nothing. Nothing. Just because we have the right words on the right pages brought forth by the right process at the right time. It's about what we mean to do and how we endeavor to be when we lift up off the page the ideas, the theologies, the meanings of what is truest and best about our faith. Every single time our basses sing those words, I feel held in a way that is virtually impossible to describe. From being in a chorus of people I could sing with every Thursday night, and each time we grace a stage together, wherever that stage happens to be. There is artistry in holding the complexities of how we connect with one another, including how we uphold the very best of our faith. A kind of creative spirit required in being fully present in a way that makes room for everyone else's equally full presence, especially when we don't understand or are unsure of the outcome of making room. But it takes persistence, audacity, humbleness, a healthy curiosity, and a commitment to community to live into this artistry and this creativity. It matters how we show up for one another. What would it mean? What would it mean to learn more deeply and more accountably how to help all of us feel held in our faith communities in ways that are virtually impossible to describe? Because they're so authentic and good. How can we reimagine and relearn new ways of showing up well for one another, even when we disagree, and especially when it's hard? Because let me tell you, it's going to be hard a lot of the time. So I'm not going to lie to you and suggest that it was easy for all of us this past cycle. It was not. Not everyone was supportive or was willing to be. Can we tell that truth? I don't believe everyone showed up well-intentioned. In the beautiful ministry that was happening all around them while we learned and sang that music. Not everyone is well-intentioned. It's an honest truth. And we made it through because what mattered most was the clarity of vision to do no harm and to center love in the work. This work that is ours to do is no small task, friends. Especially in the context of community. You can sit at home by yourself and think all kinds of lovely things, and it's going to be great. And we'll be glad for you. It's especially hard in community, but it is possible. What did Bill McKibben say in our Time for All Ages? When we work together, we can do incredible things. We can harness the power of the sun, reforest the land, help lost sea turtles find their way to the ocean. We can explore the farthest reaches of space, and looking back, we can see how we are changing our planet. It's beautiful. Fragile. It's a beautiful, fragile place, worthy of our protection. I would say it is, and we are worthy of our protection and our grace. Whose dance will we miss in the name of conventionality? Whose joy will we squash because we're so attuned to what feels good and right to us in our own individual bodies that we lose out on the possibilities laid bare by someone else's experience in community? Whose song will we silence because we've just never done whatever that thing is that way before? I want us to celebrate in all the ways we feel led. I really do. I need us to experience joy and rest, hopefulness, and a clarity of vision about how to really put love at the center of our faith, and it matters that we are mindful and care-filled. Mindful that there are many communities within this one community. Care-filled in our approach to that reality and accountable to what it means to do no harm in this and other communities we call home. Mindful of the investment we collectively make to each of us being our whole, full, beautiful selves. Care-filled enough not to repeat patterns just because we're comfortable with them that hurt more than they heal. We Unitarian Universalists may be moving ever more meaningfully to this place of mindfulness and care-filledness, having just voted in our General Assembly last week to change Article 2 of our bylaws in a way that orients us toward our values and covenants in a new way. This graphic, attributed to artist Tanya Webster, is a visual expression of these shared values that put love at the center. The Article 2 Study Commission and so many others, so many people, y'all, so many people did a stunning amount of work over the last many years to connect individuals and congregations to this revisioning of our principles into values and covenants. I am certainly grateful for that work. I know many of us are. How we will help these words leap up off the page and give life to people in a world that is on fire is up to us. I believe we can do this. Now is the time. Whole lives and whole futures, including the future of this faith, depend on it. Depend on us. Let's go. Amen. Ashe. And blessed be.